2 million years ago, a young hominin stood on a cracked lake bed in East Africa, watching the water her ancestors relied on disappear. The forest behind her is shrinking into dry, scattered grassland each dry season. She has two choices left: adapt or disappear like most species before her did, leaving only bones behind. What happened next did not just save her line from extinction, it built the brain you are using right now. You are about to see how climate change built the human species in sudden, brutal swings that wiped out entire branches of our family tree. By the end of this video, you will understand why your body walks upright, why your brain burns so much energy, and why your ancestors eventually left Africa. This is not simply about rain or heat. It is a story about survival under constant pressure, and it explains almost everything strange and unusual about being human today. Start with the ground beneath your feet. Africa was not always an open savanna. Millions of years ago, thick, unbroken forests covered much of East Africa, home to countless species that depended entirely on shade and steady rainfall. Then the climate started shifting again and again over hundreds of thousands of years without warning. Scientists call this pattern the aridity pulse. Wet, forested periods gave way to sudden droughts, then swung back to rain over and over, again and again across generations. Forests broke apart into scattered patches of trees, separated by wide stretches of open, exposed grassland. Animals that depended on unbroken forest cover lost their homes overnight. Some species vanished within only a few thousand years, which is barely a blink in evolutionary time. Our ancestors did not vanish with them. They changed instead. Here's the twist most people miss. Climate change did not push human evolution forward in one clean, straight line the way most people assume. It pushed it sideways, backward and forward again, over and over. Every time the climate swung, only the most flexible survived. Researchers call this pattern variability selection, and it rewards one particular trait above every other. Not strength, not speed, but adaptability. Every single trait that makes you human today likely traces back to ancestors who could handle sudden, sharp change better than their neighbors could. Now picture that once thick forest breaking apart into scattered islands of trees, far apart from each other. Food sources scattered across wider distances. Moving efficiently between them stopped being a bonus. It became survival. This is likely one major reason our ancestors first started walking upright on two legs. Walking on two legs used far less energy than knuckle walking through open, exposed country. A well-known study by Peter Rodman and Henry McHenry found that bipedal walking used roughly 75% less energy than typical chimpanzee movement through the trees. Over thousands of miles searching for food, that saved energy meant survival. But upright walking came with a price. It freed the hands for carrying food and tools, but it also exposed far more skin to a punishing equatorial sun. Standing upright reduces the surface area exposed to direct sunlight at midday. Losing thick body hair and gaining far more sweat glands helped ancestors stay cool over long distances. Every single one of these small changes stacked directly on top of the last. None of them happened because evolution was following some kind of grand intentional plan. They happened because a constantly shifting climate kept forcing brutal new problems, and only certain bodies managed to solve them fast enough. Here is a specific number that should genuinely stop you for a second. Fossil records suggest some early hominin species went extinct within roughly 100,000 years of major climate shifts. In evolutionary terms, that is, overnight. Entire branches of our family tree simply vanished from the fossil record, leaving little trace behind. Species built for only one narrow climate simply could not survive once that specific climate disappeared for good. Your direct ancestors were never the strongest branch sitting on that particular tree. They were the branch that kept bending without breaking. That constant bending shows up most clearly in the diet. As forests kept thinning out, the fruit and soft plants our ancestors once relied on became harder to find each season. Grasslands offered a very different menu instead. Underground tubers, tough grasses, and occasional meat scavenged from predator kills all entered the diet. Chewing this rougher new diet required stronger jaws in some early species and cleverer tool use in others. Around 2.6 million years ago, sharpened stone tools first started showing up clearly in the fossil record. That timing is not a coincidence. Climate pressure created that food shortage problem in the first place. tools became one answer to that problem. Now here is where it gets even more interesting. A changing, unstable climate did not just reshape ancient bodies over time. It reshaped ancient brains just as dramatically. Finding scattered food across a fragmented, unpredictable landscape demanded memory, planning, and problem solving. Ancestors had to remember exactly where reliable water appeared after seasonal rains. They had to track which specific trees fruited in which season, sometimes with gaps of years apart. This kind of complex mental mapping strongly favored bigger, more capable brains, and bigger brains come at a steep energy cost. Your brain alone burns roughly 20% of your total daily energy, despite making up only about 2% of your entire body weight. So why would evolution build something so costly? Because in a wildly unpredictable climate, a bigger brain quietly paid for itself over time. Ancestors who could remember more details, plan further ahead, and solve brand new problems on the fly consistently outlived those who simply could not keep pace. Brain size within the genus Homo tripled over about 2 million years. That dramatic growth tracks with the most volatile stretches of African climate history. This was not luck. This was steady pressure applied generation after generation until the brain had no choice but to grow. Bigger brains created a brand new problem almost the moment they appeared. Human infants suddenly needed much longer childhoods to grow those bigger brains safely to completion. Longer childhoods meant mothers needed help raising children who could not fend for themselves for years. This is likely one root of human cooperation. Groups that share food freely, protected infants together, and passed down hard-won survival knowledge outlived groups that went it alone. Climate pressure did not just build a bigger brain. It quietly built an entire social species that depended on other people just to survive at all. Pause here for a second, because this next part changes how you should think about migration. You probably learned somewhere that early humans left Africa out of curiosity or a taste for exploring. That is only part of the story. Climate change itself opened and closed the door itself. Around 100,000 years ago, and then again at later points, shifts in seasonal monsoon patterns turned parts of the Sahara from desert into grassland, dotted with lakes and rivers. Scientists refer to these brief windows as green Sahara periods. For a few thousand years at a stretch, a green corridor connected sub-Saharan Africa to the Middle East. Ancient humans clearly did not sit down and plan some grand, deliberate journey out of Africa. They followed water, followed grazing animals, and followed the edge of livable land, generation after generation. When the climate inevitably shifted again and the Sahara dried back out completely, that vital green corridor slammed firmly shut behind them. Some groups were left stranded far outside Africa, cut off, forced to adapt to new environments. This single climate mechanism, opening and closing like a gate, likely explains several waves of migration out of Africa, spaced tens of thousands of years apart. Now compare all of that to what was happening further north at the same time. While your African ancestors pushed into new land, the entire planet was sliding in and out of repeated ice ages. Roughly every 100,000 years, massive ice sheets crept slowly across Europe, Asia, and North America, burying entire landscapes. Sea levels dropped by more than 100 meters at certain points. Since so much water was locked into ice, land bridges suddenly appeared where the ocean had been. The Bering Land Bridge connected Asia directly to the Americas during these cold, dry stretches, opening a route no boat could have offered. Humans who migrated into these colder regions faced a completely different survival test. Fire use became less of a simple convenience and much more of an absolute requirement for daily life. Clothing, likely stitched together from animal hides, was not fashionable. It was the razor-thin line between life and death during a brutal European winter. Groups that mastered fire, sturdy shelter, and warm clothing pushed further north than any primate had gone before. Every skill you associate with resourcefulness traces back to ancestors solving problems the Ice Age threw at them without warning. Here's a name you have probably heard before, but maybe never connected to climate. Neanderthals. They were not lesser humans in any meaningful sense of that word. They were a separate, closely related branch, incredibly well adapted to cold European climates with stocky, heat-retaining bodies built specifically for the cold. For over 300,000 years straight, they thrived through repeated glacial cycles that would have easily wiped out most other large mammals outright. Then, around 40,000 years ago, they disappeared. Climate instability, combined with direct competition from newly arriving Homo sapiens, is one leading explanation today. That specific detail should hit differently than you expect. Neanderthals were never actually weak or poorly adapted creatures. They survived ice ages that lasted tens of thousands of years. What likely broke them in the end was the exact same force that shaped every human ancestor before them, arriving faster than their population and shared culture could realistically adjust. Homo sapiens spread thin across far more varied climates in smaller, more flexible traveling groups, may have simply had more practice adapting quickly under pressure. Survival was never really about strength. It came down to how fast you could change when the ground shifted. Think about what this means for your body right now. Every uncomfortable trait you carry with you today has a climate story behind it. Your sweat glands exist because distant ancestors needed to stay cool, walking miles under an equatorial sun. Your oversized, energy-hungry brain exists because unpredictable food sources demand serious memory and constant careful planning. Your deep instinct to form groups, protect children collectively exists because no single person could outsurvive an ice age alone. None of this was designed. All of it was forced, one climate shift at a time, across millions of years. Here is the real payoff you actually came here for. Climate change was never just a minor background detail. It was the primary driver behind nearly every major leap forward our species ever made. Walking upright, sharpened tool use, dramatically bigger brains, long-distance migration, and deep social cooperation all happened during or immediately after major climate shifts across Africa and beyond. Species that stayed rigid in the face of change went extinct. Species that stayed flexible became us. That single word, flexible, might genuinely be the single most important trait sitting anywhere in your entire genetic history. There is one more important thing worth sitting with before you go. The climate never actually stopped moving throughout this entire story, and it certainly never will stop moving in the future. Your ancestors did not ultimately survive because conditions eventually became stable, safe, and easy to predict. They survived because they got progressively better at handling raw instability itself, generation after generation, for millions of years. That is the real inheritance sitting inside you right now. Not comfort, not certainty, but the hard-won ability to adapt whenever the ground shifts beneath you, because history shows it always eventually does. If this changed how you see your own body and history, follow this channel for more stories about how the ancient world built the person you are today.